Men support Joe. Imagine entering a petrol station late at night on the highway with your daughter snoozing in the back seat. Everything changes when you're 2 hours from your goal. A man in a mask with a gun and knife emerges from the cash register and approaches. Fear arises. Seeing the rifle makes you afraid to move. Driving, you think of your daughter. You knew your next decision would matter. In an instant, a speed bike arrives. The podcast king is Joe Rogan. The journey of Joe Rogan, he drove into mayhem. What's next? Stay tuned to discover what happened that terrible night. Petrol station theft. Damien drove his ancient BMW from Chicago to Savannah, Georgia, for Thanksgiving with his mother, which took a long time. He departed at 3 a.m. with his 10-year-old daughter for travel. Goal is to reach city by 7 p.m. The longest they had was 15 hours to drive from Chicago to Savannah, Georgia. His daughter Melissa needed to use the loo or get snacks, so they stopped several times. However, the car broke down in Macon, Georgia and took 4 hours to fix. Damien continued to Savannah because he was determined. He continued. Few automobiles passed on the vacant highways. Petrol was low, so the meter beeped. He saw his daughter dozing in the back seat. He needed a gas station. Damien continued to Orangeburg, South Carolina. He observed the town welcome sign, which was dimly lit. He knew it would take 2 hours to get there. Eventually, he reached a faintly illuminated filling station after driving along the vacant road. He stopped at the station because he needed gas instead than driving by it. Damien exited the car with his keys. He paid for petrol and filled his car at the pump after finding his card in his pocket. He checked his watch and it was almost midnight. While filling his car, he watched his sleeping daughter. Resting would wait till he went home. He turned to gaze at the teller's office as he filled the car with gas. A mask-wearing man ran towards him with a rifle and knife. Damien stayed still despite being warned not to do stupid things. A frozen man. What would he do? Quite surprising. Damien stood still. His daughter in the back seat sprang to mind. There wasn't time to run into the car and drive away. He was conscious of the need for caution, but didn't know what to do. He stood destitute. Why did he quit now? As the thief approached, he wondered. The robber shoved Damien and put the gun to his neck, ordering him not to do anything dumb while raiding his pockets for his wallet and tiny cash. Melissa was stolen from the back seat while asleep. He signaled Damien to wake her up with his finger. He avoided waking his daughter. He wanted her out of the loop. But the thief didn't listen. He pushed Damien aside and opened the door, waking Melissa and putting the gun to her head. The girl shrieked at the gun. Damien implored him not to injure Melissa from the back. His hands covered his head. Melissa was repeatedly shot by the thief. She sobbed for her father. Our trip changed from expectations. Damien retreated as the thief grabbed Melissa with a gun to her head. A man on a motorbike enters the station unexpectedly. He hides his face with his helmet. While Melissa screams, the thief holds her. The thief threatens to shoot Melissa if the motorcyclist leaves. He gets off his bike when the thief tells him. He removes his helmet. Disbelievable. The podcast king Joe Rogan hosted the Joe Rogan Experience. Potheads like Joe Rogan, who developed a podcast, TV shows, sports commentaries, and comedy specials, and is worth $23, showed how productive they can be. What had he entered? Joe Rogan obeys. He drops off his wallet and pockets full of cash to Damien's car. Joe Rogan begs the thief to spare her. Robert tells him to be quiet and join Damien on the other side. The thief ordered Joe Rogan, who did it. The robber shouted, "Give me the keys." Damien was bewildered and disoriented, throwing the keys down. He took the keys from his neighbor, then he threw it to the thief. Melissa was released shortly as the burglar ran into his car, closed the door, and sped away. Next turn of events will startle. Damien's car keys were unexpectedly yanked out and locked by Joe Rogan. The thief was surprised by his car key issues. He pushed the key in and locked it as the thief pointed the gun at him. But he didn't blink. Joe Rogan had passed the automobile keys over to the burglar earlier, switching keys. Joe wasn't scared when the robber smashed the car glass. He called the police on his phone. The outdated model car prevented the robber from leaving. Internal opening requires a key. The thief tried to escape, which frustrated him. Damien and his daughter fled to the cashier's office in fear. After things changed, the burglar begged Joe Rogan to let him out of the car. He apologized and stated his family was struggling. That's why he did it. He informed Joe that the gun was empty. Rogan said he already thought so. Joe Rogan questioned the robber while waiting for the police. He looked like a podcast host. He discovered that the thief was lodging with 3 kids and promised them food after weeks without. A robber planned to rob the convenience shop because it was normally empty. He surprised himself by running into the checker. He fought her for money, knocking her out. About to leave, he spotted Damien pull into the store. He took advantage of Damien because no one else was around. Rogan understood that things were challenging and that many people were struggling, but he thought there were better ways to handle them. He requested the thief's name and introduced himself as Kevin. He learned about Kevin's family then. Kevin was educated, married, and has 3 children. Kevin was asked what his kids would say if they saw him now. He was too surprised to speak. Crying broke out. I imagined a movie scenario when the thief cried. He regretted himself. He requested his house address and kids' names as the police siren grew louder. Kevin, the thief, begged Rogan to let him go so his kids were secure before the cops arrived. He cried and said his family only had him and couldn't live without him in prison. Rogan listened but reminded him his actions caused what happened. He felt horrible for Kevin, but he would pay. Kevin would pay for thieves' crimes like everyone else because Rogan didn't think they should get away with it. Kevin was taken by the police. Damien and Melissa thanked Joe Rogan for his help. People chuckled when Melissa declared him her hero. They called her father the real hero. Rogan said he will spend Thanksgiving with them in Savannah, Georgia, said goodbye and wrote their address. Not only did Joe Rogan save the day, nobody could have predicted what happened next. Joe Rogan unexpectedly visited Kevin's residence the next day. Met Kevin's wife and 3 kids. His appearance shocked them. Rogan introduced himself and explained their purpose. He didn't want Kevin's family to suffer for their father's mistakes. He promised to provide food, education, clothing, and housing. They would never worry about their future. Quite surprising. This was not expected by the family. They thanked Rogan for his kindness. Rogan looked after Kevin's family while their dad was jailed. Kevin got out of jail 7 years later. He had fun seeing his family again and appreciated Joe Rogan's care. Kevin, Melissa, and Damien appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience a few weeks following Kevin's release from jail to discuss the night that transformed their lives. After stopping a robbery, Joe Rogan discovered more at the petrol station that night. His presence caused the unthinkable. It gave a struggling family hope and changed their lives forever. Joe Rogan is kind. Always kind, Joe Rogan has a big heart. Not new. Also, you're funny, thanks, you're funny. Sometimes unintentionally, loves helping people constantly. Over the years, he has always helped others. He generally keeps his charitable efforts private, but he gave all the money from his stand-up event to the Las Vegas shooting victims. The Mandalay Bay Casino Hotel in Las Vegas experienced a stunning event on October 1st, 2017. A gunman fired from their room, murdering over 50 and injuring over 100 of 2,000 music enthusiasts at a concert. Due to the unforeseen tragedy, Rohan committed to donate all proceeds from his stand-up concert at the Terry Fader Theater at Mirage Hotel Casino that weekend to the GoFundMe. The GoFundMe aids Las Vegas shooting victims. Help is being sought for gunshot victims. Las Vegas officials created a GoFundMe to provide victims' families money. Another wonderful incident was when Rogan matched his friend Jim Jeffries' charity stand-up concert proceeds for wildlife warriors. Created by the Irwin family to generate funds for endangered animals. Jeffries raised $80,000 for the charity show, and Rogan quadrupled it to $160,000. Whitney Cummings, a comedian and friend of Joe Rogan, openly discussed Rogan's kindness on Twitter in 2020. Since Rogan prefers to donate anonymously, his donations are rarely known. Let's examine Joe Rogan's past. The American comedian, actor, and podcaster Joe Rogan was born Joseph James Rogan on August 11, 1967 in Newark, New Jersey, advised attractive females to eat spiders on Fear Factor. Now the UFC face, he has won 4 World MMA Awards for Best TV Announcer and Personality of the Year. UFC host and spokesperson. His show, The Joe Rogan Experience, is one of the highest paid podcasts in the world and popular nationwide, even though his fans disagree with him on current events for various reasons. Before his parents divorced at 5, Rogan lived with them in Newark, New Jersey. Looking back, Rogan said growing up with his parents was terrible. His cruel father hit him as a child. This made him fear his father as a child. He took her to San Francisco, where she met her partner. It was her second marriage. With his new family, Rogan moved to Newton, Upper Falls, Massachusetts. He graduated from Newton South High School in 1985 and got along with his stepfather. Rogan started painting and exercising as a child. He started daily exercise at 7. He stopped drawing and joined martial arts to get fit. He liked karate and wrestling and started doing them. In a Black Belt magazine interview, Rogan discussed his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, and taekwondo journey. He claimed 4 straight state titles and a brilliant amateur career, but as Rogan built his martial arts career, something unexpected happened. Ryan Rogan kept hurting himself and suffering chronic headaches. It was hard for him to decide. He quit martial arts. At 19, Joe Rogan began teaching karate at Boston University. He taught his favorite sport because he couldn't play professionally. Rogan's instruction was about excite kids who loved the sport like he did. Eventually, he stopped teaching and found something else. Stage comedy. His pals smiled at his jokes and facial impressions and suggested he try stand-up. Due to their persistent comments, Rogan moved on to his next project. At 21, he performed his first stand-up gig at a Boston Stitches Comedy Club open mic night on August 27, 1988. This allowed him to enter show industry. He moved to NYC and became a full-time comedian. He reached Hollywood. Joe Rogan earned his first TV role in 1994 after signing with Disney. People enjoyed how he played Frank Volante in Hardball and Joe Gorelli on News Radio, which made him relatable. Joe Rogan has 8 Netflix comedy specials. Joe Rogan appeared in Rocky Mountain High 2014, Triggered 2016, and Strange Times 2018. Rogan had a difficult journey to popularity, but hosting Fear Factor was his break. After Fear Factor, Joe Rogan hosted The Man Show, saying he took the position for the stable income and to make it simpler to pursue his stand-up comedy and other aspirations. Rogan asks several inquiries. His followers enjoyed his shows every time he performed. Rogan became a UFC backstage interviewer in 1997 due to his martial arts background. He mentioned on his show that he initially completed the work for gratis, which is intriguing. He became a fan favorite since he was skilled at commentating and knew the sport well. He left the company because he wasn't compensated enough. However, UFC president Dana White persuaded him to return as a color analyst in 2002. An MMA award made Dana White the world's most popular fight promoter. For being Top Man of the Year every year since 2010 and making the UFC popular worldwide. Rogan remains a key UFC commentator. The first Rogan podcast occurred in 2009. This was a casual live feed from his California home. He christened it the Joe Rogan Experience in 2010. Despite starting as a joke, the podcast became famous, accepted, and popular across the US. The host, Joe Rogan, has hosted doctors like Andrew Huberman, scientists like Brian Cox, celebrities like Miley Cyrus, Kanye West's guests, and even Elon Musk. Those he spoke openly with. Listeners usually enjoy these chats. Which US podcast was most popular in 2015? The Joe Rogan Experience. Everyone talked about his podcast. Donald Trump and Rogan will have a popular program. One US presidential contender on October 25, 2024. Joe Rogan was the highest paid podcaster in 2020, according to Forbes. YouTube and sponsorships brought him $30 million annually. Big corporations including 1-800-flowers.com, stamps.com, Audible, and Lenovo sponsor Joe Rogan. Who would have predicted this? There's more. Joe Rogan signed a $200 million Spotify deal in 2020 to exclusively stream his show. After the show's success, Rogan moved from LA to a fancy fort with his wife and 3 kids. This show is still recorded in his $18.4 million Lake Austin mansion. Joe Rogan's Experience show was successful, but he had issues. In 2021, he used racist comments on a webcast regarding COVID-19. 270 scientists and doctors wrote to Spotify in 2021 to criticize it. Spotify added content advisory notices to the episodes, but still working with Rogan. In 2022, Rogan apologized and had 70 Spotify episodes removed. Despite these issues, the Rogan Experience podcast is one of the most popular worldwide. Show admirers number 14.5 million on Spotify and 17.5 million on YouTube. Do you like how Joe Rogan treated the thief and his family? Would you be kind to a robber who stole from you? Comment what you think. Please share, like, and follow for more. Also, click the next video. You'll enjoy.